Hi, I'm Caroline from Thorndown and I'm going to be showing you how to do some maintenance painting on this hut and shed. Normally maintenance is pretty straightforward and simple. All you have to do is just clean the surface with water, maybe a spot of detergent, leave it to dry, and then if there are any flaky or old bits in the coating that aren't sound, then you just have to sand it back. Now with this shed it had an old oil paint on it. We'd left it for way too long and basically should have maintained it years ago, but we didn't. So the old coating was in a terrible state, really patchy, flaky, covered in algae and muck. So we used a pressure washer to clean it. Now pressure washers are brilliant, they clean things really quickly and easily, but they're also very powerful and aggressive. So they'll blast an old coating off. They can also sort of splinter edges and weak joints in the wood. So if you do get any splintering, then you have to sand that off as well. There was still quite a lot of old patchy coating left after we'd let it dry. So then we had to use a power sander to totally just go over the whole area. Now it's all clean, dry, sanded and ready to paint. So when it comes to choosing a colour, then you have lots and lots of choice. With Thorndown wood paints, we've got 70 colours in the core colour chart, but then also we can do all 1800 Rail Classic and design colours too. So if you wanted to use a translucent wood tone, then you can do on here, but because it's translucent, it is going to show up any of the patchy unevenness underneath. So you could go for one of the darker colours like the blackthorn, and that will probably overcoat and even everything out. But it's far easier and simpler just to go for a solid opaque colour coating instead. Now I'm going to be going for one of the more muted tones from the Somerset Heritage Colour Collection, and it's a lovely colour called Heart Lake Blue, and it's going to tone beautifully with my greenhouse and with everything else in the garden. Thorndown wood paint is specifically engineered for exterior use, so we use a very high performing acrylic resin which gives the coating its longevity and water repellency. It's water based, it's low in odour and VOC, and we also use VOC free exterior grade colour pigments. They perform at the highest levels in the weather resistance and light fast tests, so you're going to see those colours staying strong and true for many years. Now normally for maintenance you just put one coat on, but because we left this for so long we've had to sand back basically to bare wood on most of the shed. Then you need to put on the full 2 coats for full exterior protection. Now we think that paint is best shaken and stirred, so give it a really good shake first, about 30 to 60 seconds, and that will just help to kickstart the mixing process. Use a paint stirrer. Sticks or any kind of small surface areas won't do anything at all. It's a bit like mixing a cake basically. You wouldn't mix a cake with a stick because it wouldn't do anything. So same with paint as well. Paint stirrers are so cheap and they're just absolutely brilliant. So give it a nice good stir for about 30 to 60 seconds. And it does depend on the colour pigments as well, so the stronger the colour tends to have a higher density of colour pigments in it, so you just need to give those a really good mix to make sure they're all stirred back in properly. Lighter colours, less pigment, probably not as much for stirs required. Also it depends on how long the paint's been sat for. If it's been sat for ages, months or even a year or two, then all of the components will have separated out, so it'll require a lot more mixing to get it back in again. So you can use a roller or a sprayer or a brush to paint on the Thorndown wood paint. Personally I prefer to use a brush. Now for water-based paints it's good to use a really good quality synthetic brush, and also pick a brush that's about the right size for the project you're working on. So this is going to fit this size of panel beautifully. And then paint on, going along with the grain, working in whole sections and just working it well into the wood. Now work the paint really well into all the nooks and crannies and just make sure that you've sealed all of the wood with it. So you can remove all of your dull furniture, or if you've got a steady hand then just cut into it. That's the first coat done now, and it's a good time just to check over and make sure you haven't got any drips and runs, and if you do, just tighten them up and even them out. Now this coating is microporous, which means that it allows some vapour transfer to come through the coating, so moisture won't get trapped inside the wood. Also it's flexible, so that means that as the wood changes and expands and contracts as the temperature changes, then the coating flexes with it too. So now just leave it to dry for 1 to 2 hours. The hotter and the warmer or drier the day is, then the quicker it dries. So on a hot, dry day, it can be ready to overcoat in 30 minutes. I'm going to be using Way White on the trim. It's going to contrast beautifully with the Heart Lake Blue, and I'll also use it on the interior of the shed, so it'll just brighten it up and make it look really nice and pretty. Thorndown wood paint dries pretty quickly, and it's normally dry within 1 to 2 hours depending on what the weather's like. Now today it's a bit overcast and a little bit cooler, so we left it for 2 hours before doing the second coat. So we've already put the second coat onto this side, and now just putting the second coat onto this front face. You want to make sure there's a good 24 hours before any rain's forecast after the second coat, just to give it plenty of time to dry and fix and cure properly. And then once the second coat's on, this coating will be good for about 5 to 8 years, depending on your level of wear and tear and exposure. Vertical surfaces last a lot longer than horizontals, so when it's time to do a maintenance coat, just clean it, dry it, slap another coat on and you're done. So the Way White on the trim is ready for another coat now. And normally with whites, off-whites, creams, I'd always expect to do kind of 3 coats, especially if you're overcoating a previous dark colour. But this is going on so beautifully that I think I might get away with just 2 coats. And that's it, the shed's finished. It's had 2 coats on. The first coat soaks into the timber, the second coat just glides on top, and now it's looking absolutely beautiful outside and in.